Welcome back. Today we are going to continue learning the principles that help us determine which statements in the Torah could be considered a mitzvah and which not, which are part of the count of the 613 and which not. So today we will learn principles 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. Principle number 4 is that any all-encompassing statements in the Torah are not considered in the count of the 613. For example, the Torah oftentimes says, "You shall keep all of my mitzvot, you shall follow all of the laws of the Torah." Those are not in the count. They are general statements. They are all-encompassing statements, not specific ones. Principle number 5 is that oftentimes we find reasons for the prohibitions that are worded in a way that could be understood as a prohibition itself, but in actual fact, it is just the Torah wording the prohibition, wording the reason for the prohibition, and in such a case it would not be considered its own independent mitzvah. For example, there is a prohibition that once a man is divorced, if he would like and his divorcee would like, they could technically remarry. However, if his divorcee got remarried to a second man in the interim, then it is forbidden. Then there is a prohibition on her first husband to go and remarry her. The verse says, "He shall not remarry her." That is clearly in the count of the 613. However, the verse continues by saying, "He shall not remarry her, and he shall not bring sin into the land." That second half of the verse, the reason he shall not bring sin into the land, is not an independent instruction. Rather, it is the Torah describing how the Torah sees the result of this behavior, the reason for this prohibition, that it will be considered bringing sin into the land. Therefore, the second half of the verse is not considered its own independent mitzvah on the list of the 613. Principle number 6 is that when we have a mitzvah that has both a positive and a negative instruction, it is counted as two separate mitzvot on the list. For example, when it comes to Shabbat, there is a positive mitzvah telling us that we are obligated to observe, to rest on Shabbat. Then there is a negative prohibition where the Torah says, "Do not do work on Shabbat." So this is an example of where both would be considered two mitzvot on the list. You will have both a positive and a negative included in the list of the 613. Principle number 7 is that if you have a mitzvah that could be applied in various different ways by different people or in different situations, those various applications of the mitzvah do not render it, do not count it as a separate mitzvah for every single individual. Rather, it is counted as one mitzvah which has various ways of being applied. For example, there are certain offerings that were brought in the temple that would depend on the financial situation of the individual, how much they have to give, and what level offering they have to give. So although practically speaking, different people could be coming in and bringing a very different offering, the mitzvah is counted as one, even though different people would practice it in their own individual way based on their own individual circumstances. Principle number 8 is that we do not count a negative statement, like a warning statement, made in the language of a do not or you shall not, as its own independent mitzvah. And the only way to really determine this is by studying the context. So oftentimes there's a statement that sounds like you shall not or they shall not do something, but really it is a warning rather than an instruction. For example, after the story of the rebellion of Korach, the Torah says to the rest of the people, "They shall not be like Korach who rebelled against the people." This is not a mitzvah, it's not a prohibition telling the people that they are forbidden from behaving like Korach. Rather, the Torah is saying that if they are to behave like Korach, it will not go well and they will meet the same fate like Korach did. And that is the understanding in that context of the "they shall not be like Korach." Not an instruction, therefore not one of the count of 613. Rather, a description or a warning, shall we say, of what this behavior could lead to. And finally, for today, principle number 9 is that we do not count the number of times a mitzvah is mentioned and repeated in the Torah as a separate instruction, as a separate mitzvah. So for example, the mitzvah to keep Shabbat is mentioned in the Torah 12 times, but there is only one positive mitzvah. There's also one negative mitzvah, but there's only one positive mitzvah in the count for keeping Shabbat. The same thing is the prohibition of drinking blood is mentioned 7 times. Nevertheless, it is only considered in the count once. We will continue with the rest of the principles tomorrow.